Welcome to an episode of Founder in the Chair. I'm your host, Veena, and today my guest is super special. So, what happens when two family members with completely different experiences of alcohol come together to challenge the way we celebrate, connect, and socialise? Today I'm joined by Navraj Dhesi, one of the co-founders of Nekta Drinks, an award-winning alcohol-free cocktail brand born from lived experience, family values, and a desire to create something that simply didn't exist. Navraj is a cybersecurity specialist, entrepreneur, and person in long-term recovery who has spent years navigating social occasions where choosing not to drink often meant feeling excluded from the experience. His brother and co-founder, Jagrup, is a non-drinker. Despite coming from opposite ends of the alcohol conversation, both shared a belief that people deserve better choices and that alcohol-free drinks should be every bit as sophisticated, flavourful and memorable as their alcoholic counterparts. So what started as a conversation between family members evolved into a mission. Together they created Nekta, a range of premium alcoholic-free cocktails designed not as substitutes but as drinks worthy of celebration in their own right. Built as a social enterprise, Nekta commits 15% of its profits to supporting No More Pretending, a not-for-profit organisation focused on reducing stigma around alcohol, harm and connecting people to support, particularly within South Asian communities. Recognised by both the Great Taste Awards and the World Alcohol Awards, Nekta is helping redefine what alcohol-free can look like, proving that this is simply an alternative to alcohol, but an exciting category in its own right. Welcome, Navraj.
Thank you for having me.
What an intro. You've been on a journey.
Yes, we have. We'll have to get you to do some of our reading for our social media. You do so well.
Thank you. Lots of experience with some great guests as well who also teach me all the time. So I really want to hear about this. You work full time. We have Nekta Drinks here. So you've experienced both sides of alcohol. Years of dependency, followed by long-term recovery. Looking back, what made you realise that something was missing from the alcohol-free drinks market? And then why did you decide to do something about it?
Well, like you say, so I'm in recovery myself, so I'm a recovering alcoholic. So I went through a period of dependency. And it was more so when I stopped drinking. So in the first 6 months, a year, I really stayed away from bars, restaurants, kind of what you'd call wet places. It was just more to not be in that environment. But as I started to become more comfortable in my recovery and go to these places, you just realise that there's no real options. You know, alcohol-free always feels like an afterthought, you know, and most of the time, do you even look at a menu? How often do you say, I'll just have a Coke, I'll just have a water? Yeah. And, you know, that's not to say that there are some good alcohol-free ones out there, but what we found a lot of times they were quite sugary as well. I'm of an age now where I have
to watch your sugar.
Yeah, I feel like a right old man. Just like, how much sugar can I have at night? Because we've got a young daughter, and my wife's always, we can't give either of them too much sugar, dad or the daughter, or they'll just be bouncing off the walls. So for us, it was about, actually, we wanted to create something with depth and flavour. So if you're not drinking as well, it's not just about the taste. You can feel a bit left out, you know, if you stood there with a water or a soft drink, because, you know, I still had my corporate career, you know, socializing is a big part of that. You know, people go for drinks after work. As a traveling consultant, a lot of time in hotels, everyone goes out after work. And depending on what's in your hand can really make you feel kind of left out of the conversation. And people, you know, and it used to be me. I used to be that guy going, why aren't you drinking? Because for me, I didn't know anything else. So to be on the other side of that, it was a bit embarrassing going, was I that guy? That must have been so annoying.
Yeah. So that's where the idea was born.
That was that was my half of it. Obviously, Jagrup, who's not here today, he's a Orthodox Sikh, so he's never really drank. For him, he really struggled in his career in terms of not really feeling welcome in them spaces. So for him, obviously there may be alcohol-free options, but when it's always specifically around alcohol, he just didn't feel comfortable in that environment. And both of us don't have alcohol-free drinks. So for him, you know, he's not going to have an alcohol-free beer. And myself, there's an emotional memory there. So for us, it was always, you had the choice of water or a soft drink. And things have evolved, that these spaces are changing. And for us, it was about actually, how can we help that space evolve and make sure that there's options there for people that aren't drinking? Because people are not drinking now for a variety of reasons.
It's interesting what you said there, because you won't even do an alcohol-free beer.
No.
Because there's an attachment.
Well, I was never a real beer drinker in my drinking, to be honest.
I mean, that sort of drink,
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
So it's a mocktail, but without the alcohol and things like that. So you won't do that.
Well, yeah, I avoid alcohol tasting things. So that's why with our drinks as well, we didn't try do another mojito or anything like that. We wanted to go flavour first, because for us, we didn't want to copy the taste and flavour of alcohol. What we wanted to do was the moods. Why do people drink? So we created 3 different moods with adaptation. So you've got kind of one to get you in the mood, like your pre-drinks, your party starter. You've got one we call the conversation starter, where you want to sit back with friends and relax and be in the moment, and then one to just unwind. So rather than it doesn't have to be it's not the taste that people drink for. It was actually what it was doing for them.
I love that. Okay, so Nekta wasn't created to imitate alcohol. Why was it important to you to build something with its own identity, flavour, profile? I know you've just said, it's got the moods, but apart from that, because you could have just something that's alcohol-free, an alternative, like you sell your mojitos or whatever. But what else was it is it because so that when you went out, you didn't feel left out, so people could join the party?
Exactly that. There's the taste side of it. So we wanted that depth of flavour, that something that wasn't too sugary, something that felt that it had the same love that goes into a cocktail. You see the artistry, you see them put it together. So we wanted something that looked the part. But then also, that feeling left out because you're not drinking, that's slowly starting to change.
Yeah.
But, how can we help? How can we help that? How can we build on that? So for us, it was very important to have a drink that was dedicated to people that aren't drinking, rather than it being an afterthought.
Yeah,
if you think, it's not just, people that are religiously orthodox that don't drink. A lot more people are moderating now. Obviously, you might be going out, you might be driving. There's so many different reasons people don't drink now. And an interesting one for myself, obviously, in recovery, for me, it was always binary. You're either drinking or you weren't. And for me, I was always drinking. But a lot of people now are calling it's called striping. So they'll have an alcoholic drink, then a non-alcoholic drink. So rather than I'm just having alcohol night. So it was about, well, actually, how can we match that same kind of flavour profile? So, that richness of taste that you have with a cocktail.
Never heard of striping.
Yeah, it's an ever evolving space, and we're learning every day as well as kind of people's habits change.
Yeah. Wow. So recovery is often seen as the end of a chapter, but for you it became the foundation for both No More Pretending and Nekta. So how has your lived experience shaped not only the business you've built, but the impact you hope it has on other people's lives?
I think simply put, recovery saved my life. If I hadn't got into recovery, I wouldn't be alive today.
How many years ago was that?
14 years. So,
14 years,
yeah,
wow.
So thank you. So I got sober at 29, because by 29 I was suicidal. And I think as soon as you say alcoholic, everyone's got this idea of what I was. At the height of my drinking, I never drank every day, never drank in the morning, had a great job. I was a travelling consultant, house, car, married, had all the trappings of a successful life. Yet on the inside, I just felt like I couldn't go on. It felt like a house of cards, and that bottom layer was starting to shake, and it was all going to come crashing down. For me, the best way to describe it was that I was a binge drinker, but the binges were getting bigger and bigger, and you could see that they were getting closer and closer together. So I could see myself that if I carry on this journey, I'm going to end up being a daily drinker. Because it used to be a big Saturday night here and there, then it started becoming a weekend. Then it became every weekend. And you go through this idea that I can stop anytime. I'll stop, when I get married, when my wife's pregnant, with the job, this, that, and the other. All these things happened. Yeah, I couldn't stop. And, my key message when it comes to recovery is always that, look, this is a family illness. So easy to say, I'm an alcoholic. People focus on me, my drinking. Impacted everybody around me. Every relationship, mum, dad, wife, brothers, friends, work colleagues. They're the unseen victims of addiction, because they're the ones that kind of have to adapt and suffer in silence. And then when you come from a tight-knit community like ours, it just ripples out. And, if you're of Punjabi descent, it's very unlikely that you don't know someone personally that's either struggling or has unfortunately passed away from this, And I always like to reinforce that, 14 years sober, but it's never really about how far I am from my last drink. How far am I from my next one? I'm not cured of being an alcoholic. I can never safely consume alcohol again. So, recovery is a huge part of my life. It shapes who I am today. And what came out of that was no more pretending. So we did a lot of work. So I got sober through a 12-step fellowship, and we did a lot of work in there because my first meeting, I was this bald Asian kid in the basement of a church going, what am I doing here? Looking around, nobody's Indian.
They don't look like you.
Exactly. What do they know about me? I stayed because I was too scared to walk out. I listened to this guy share. I had nothing in common. I think he was like a 50-year-old plasterer. And I was blown away. He was explaining stuff I'd felt all my life. I'd never been able to put it into words. And I left that first meeting with hope because I realized I wasn't alone. I wasn't the only person going through this, because addiction's a very isolating illness. I'm the youngest of four. I'm the baby of the family. Even my extended family, I'm the baby. So I was just doted on as a child. So I was surrounded by love, yet I still felt disconnected. And it was through alcohol that I only ever felt that connection, or what I thought was that connection. So, it's very isolating, because for me, I thought the environment, the circumstances I was in were just so hard. Yet I live in them same circumstances today, but in recovery, it's a different perspective. Rather than this dark world where nobody cares, I realized that some of it was manufactured by myself. Some of it, people were the way they were because they're reacting to the way I was behaving. I'd never look at my behavior. It's very easy to see people's reaction, go, look at how they are. Look in the mirror. Wasn't ready to do that. But that's what recovery does. So from there, No More Pretending was born, and that's the work that I do with other organisations like the NHS, Change, Grow, Live. So it's about how we can help other recovery institutes better connect with Punjabi communities, how they can improve their cultural competence, understand us. Because if you don't understand me, how can you help me? Because a lot of times the onus is put on us as a community, and it's, people learn the word like ijat and stuff like that, talk about honour, and it becomes, they don't ask for help. Whereas I've got a phone full of family begging for help, but they don't always feel like it's culturally appropriate. So it's about, rather than saying we've got an open door, we have to start meeting people where they are. And that's not just a Punjabi community thing. It's all migrant communities. If you think of the Eastern European, the Irish, it happens a lot where you've got this cultural heritage that doesn't naturally fit with your British nationality. You get this, well, how English am I? How Punjabi, or this am I? And for me, I never felt either. I felt on the sidelines, and it's only in my 30s and 40s that I learned where I sit on there, and it can change. I don't have to define it as a static, I'm this English or I'm this Punjabi. It's, I can be as English as I want in the office, get a phone call from mum and start talking about roti, and, I'm more comfortable with that. But that's only come through recovery. So for us, it was about, as a non-profit, a big challenge you always have is funding. How can we do bigger projects? We need funding. So a lot of your time goes towards looking for money and grants. So rather than focus on that, we thought, well, if we created something, we could use revenue from that to run this, then we become self-sustaining. And that's why the mission of Nekta was always to change the way we come together to celebrate. So our mission's never everybody drink more nectar. It's about, let's look at how we celebrate. Because as a community, we love to get together. It's just the volume on the alcohol's just been turned up a bit too much. And just because I'm in recovery doesn't mean I'm anti-alcohol. There's a place for it. I've got 3 brothers that can drink normally, just I can't. But for the people that don't, that's where Nekta came from. And specifically, when I look at Mum, Bibi, when it comes to parties, they get orange juice in a wine flute. What do they get to celebrate? So we made a drink and a flavour especially for them. So.
Love that. Navraj, can I just touch on something you said earlier about how it affects families, like they're the silent victims. You were married at the time, at 29, when it started. And how did it affect your wife? And the reason why I ask this, I have so many friends who are going through this, where, and you know what it's like, the husband's an alcoholic, and how it impacts the children, the mum, the dad, the wife, and then she needs help and support as well.
Exactly. Who cares for the carer? That's a big thing in our community.
Yeah.
And I think before I jump into that, one thing to realise is that we always say, oh, the husband's an alcoholic. I equally know.
It can be, yes.
Exactly.
I'll take that back.
Well,
Yes,
no, but
could be.
that's just your context from your
Yeah,
friendship group.
yeah.
But it's an equal opportunities illness. It affects everyone equally. Although what you find is with South Asian women, it's kind of a bit of an accelerated journey, because where I learned to drink with my brothers, my dad. You know, there was safeguards around me to test my limits and learn how to, behave while I was drinking. Whereas if you are, let's just say, in quotes, not meant to drink, and in some people they still see that as women shouldn't drink. It's not a personal opinion I have. If they do try it, they try it in secret. What happens is they quickly get themselves in trouble because there's no safeguards, there's no stabilizers on the bike. They're just drinking dangerous amounts very quickly, and we've seen it in other South Asian communities like the Muslim community. Although they're not meant to drink, some people choose to try it, but they find themselves quickly getting into trouble with it. Then they're stuck. How do I ask for help? How do I ask for help for something I shouldn't have been doing? And, it turns into a big problem. But going back to your original question, it's such a massive strain on the family. And I do a lot of work with the Sikh helpline. And 9 times out of 10, people that come to me direct, it's always the family that ask for help first. It's never the individual. By the time the person with the problem asks for help, they're in crisis. It's not the drink's not just the problem. Health, money, job, everything. The house is on fire. And it becomes very difficult to help, whereas the family will ask a lot before. They'll say, can you speak to so-and-so? Can you do something for them? And the key message is that there's help for them. I got sober through a 12-step fellowship, but there's another 12-step group for family members. Your happiness shouldn't be contingent on, let's say for my wife, her happiness shouldn't be contingent on if I'm drinking or not. And it can be a challenging one within our community because it's about navigating boundaries, and that's not something we're naturally taught. We come from a very hierarchical community. When we look at elders, these things are inherited. You just because someone's older, you have to respect them. However, sometimes when you're drawing a boundary, it can feel, there's a lot of guilt. It can feel like disrespect when it's not. You're just drawing a healthy line saying this is enough for me. But, we have to learn to navigate that as a community. But for anyone out there struggling, reach out for help. There is support for you. And if you've got a partner or anyone struggling, myself, other people from the fellowship, people are always willing to reach out and talk to them. My journey didn't start because, look, I wanted to stop drinking at the end. I just didn't know how to myself. My journey didn't start until I connected with another alcoholic, because they didn't even ask me. I thought they were going to ask me 1,000 questions. They didn't even let me talk, and I love to talk. They shared their story. And for them, it wasn't even about the drinking. They shared about what was going on the inside. It's so hard for the family because all they see is the drink. They don't see what's going on in the inside for the person. And, people say, oh, they've got lots of money or this, that, and the other. We come from a very affluent community. Addiction is rife in that, Success doesn't mean you can't get addicted. Workaholics, alcoholics, these things go hand in hand. So you see it a lot. But the key message, just reach out and connect, ask for help.
And with your with No More Pretending, you do have families reach out to you as well.
Yeah, so there's lots of avenues to ask for help. And when it comes to No More Pretending, it's not that we actually provide end user support. And people think that's a bit weird. So you don't actually help. I said, I do help people, but that's always through 12-step, because that's how I got sober. If I got sober through this process, there's no point in creating a new one. No More Pretending was always about how I can work with other organizations to help them connect with the community. But it also gives me a platform to talk about my own recovery. So when people do come to me, that help is there, but it's always through the 12-step fellowship.
Thank you. So Navraj, you've built Nekta alongside a full-time career, family commitments, and your work supporting people in recovery. So what have been the biggest lessons you've learned about resilience, entrepreneurship, and staying connected to your purpose?
You can't do it all. There's no such thing as balance.
You're doing a lot of it.
Yeah, well, it's easy because I'm sat here, the lights are shining, there's me, there's my brother-in-law, there's my sister-in-law, my wife, there's a team of us. We balance this together. But the truth is, people always talk about that work-life balance. The situation we're in at the moment, it's impossible to balance. Something always has to give. We're in our second year of trading now, so it's that balance between the day job this, and then the family time as well. You know, unfortunately, the girls are always in the car with us, going on journeys and stuff like that. And the hope is that, you know, we're not going to be doing that forever. You know, we're building the foundation for something, but it is difficult. And it does take an emotional toll on you. And I think some of the guardrails I've put in to make sure to kind of keep that sanity, because, you know, when you're working this many hours, your head's always the first thing to go.
Yeah.
And when you're in recovery, that's a very dangerous place to go, because in recovery, I didn't kill my demons. I learned to live with them. So that's why it's always about, I can easily sit here talk about recovery because that's easy. You want to know how well I am? Ask my wife, ask my brother-in-law, ask the kids. Is Nav being a bit short? Is he, is he okay? So it's about making sure that I've got them guardrails in. So, you know, recovery is always first. I still go to the same amount of meetings that I did in the beginning, still speak to other people in the fellowship almost daily, you know, checking in, and they'll check in with me because I'm very good at smiling and talking and laughing, but they know to ask the questions, because, you know, you ask somebody, they're okay, they'll say, yeah. When you're in the fellowship, they'll keep asking because they know, they can see from your eyes and they go, you ready to talk about it? Then it just comes out. And it's such a beautiful thing, having a network of people that without judgment, I can just let it all out. And they'll sometimes say to me, well, look, that's justified. Sometimes they're saying, you all right there? You know, you seem a bit angry at so-and-so. Is that? And then you kind of stop and go, I'm just tired. I've got people around me that help me press the brakes because I don't press them myself. And it's the same for the other members of the team as well. We just, at the moment, it's lots of supporting each other.
That's what people underestimate, is having a network.
Nobody does this alone. You know, you see it today. There's this real thing about grind and hustling, and you see a lot of podcasters. But for every founder, there's about 10 people behind them carrying them because it's so difficult. And no matter how much you estimate how hard it's going to be, it'll always be harder because there's things that you haven't thought of. For us, people always ask us how you're doing. The key phrase the whole team always say, every day is a school day, because we're always learning something new. But the beauty of it has also been that we've just got to meet so many amazing people. And, you know, through networking, through this, like wherever we do Nekta events, we always talk recovery. So it's given us a connection into people that we might not have had before. So hopefully we've had an opportunity to plant that seed of recovery where it might not have gone before. And then it's connected us to people like yourself.
I know, and we just met at a pop-up through the lovely Hodge.
Exactly, you know, like one minute your sister's giving me a head massage, which was, I didn't realise how stressed I was until she was like, look, 30 seconds. I was like, please don't film it. And she did film it.
Yeah.
It was just, I was like, this is amazing. Do you know what I mean? But like you say, just...
You came on really last minute to that pop-up as well, didn't you?
Yeah, so Haj is a great friend. So Haj does a lot of work in the gambling side, and you start to build this network. And what's really beautiful is you've got a lot of people from the South Asian community just talking about problems, just saying, I had an issue with this, this and this. I got help and it's not the end of the world.
And your wife was there with you, which was really nice to see how she supports you as well.
She supported me all the way through because she was there. So I got sober 2 years into marriage, and she was there through the tough times as well. She was that wife that, do you know, at the end of the party, at the end of the wedding, the lady stood there with the laddu, just looking at her husband going, what's he doing now? And I'd be like, oh, one more minute, just one more drink, or let's go somewhere else. And she's like, come on, let's go. Everyone else is going normally, and she was just waiting around. And, you know, she's got the patience of a saint. Today, you know, I'm just because I'm sober, I'm still a pain. So she's got a patience of a saint, and 2 other children to look after as well, because she does do the lion's share of that.
Yeah. So Nekta has already received recognition from both the Great Taste Awards and the World Alcohol Awards. When you think 10 years into the future, what do you hope people say about the brand and the movement that you're trying to create?
I think that's a great question, actually. I think more about the movement. I think, you know, Nekta's a drink that's part of a category that's growing. It's about having more alcohol-free options there. We all love to go out. It doesn't always have to be about the alcohol, and having that balance. So I'm not anti-alcohol saying we shouldn't have it, but, you know, just having them options there where people go out to connect, to socialize, and that it doesn't have to be specifically for the drink. And, you know, that's why we were very specific about having the adaptogens in. So it wasn't just about having the taste. It was about, actually, you know, people do drink for emotional comfort as well. But we can do that using natural things as well. So for us, it's about having the category being less of an afterthought and just more widely available. Because like, if you think about food, restaurants are a big one. If you're not drinking, what options do you really have? So, you know, it's about actually having alcohol-free food pairings as well, things to complement it. So it's not just water or fizzy drinks.
How did you come up with the name?
Oh, this took us forever.
Did it?
It took us so long. And, you know, obviously, nectar as a word, it means the drink of the gods, and people know it as various things related to a drink. But it was a friend that was talking. We were talking about something else, actually. We were talking about recovery. And Ekta is Punjabi for unity. And he had to explain that because my Punjabi is terrible. I'm conversational in it, but that felt like an advanced word. He was like, Ekta. I was like, oh, okay. But when he said unity, it stuck in my heart because unity is such a big part of the 12-step fellowship. Okay. So for me, I was like, oh, Ekta. And then, oh, wait, we can make it sound like nectar as well. It was just, that was the one, you know. We did have various other ones that we wanted to try, like we were thinking of Bias at one point, you know, thirst.
Yeah.
But one of our friends was just, he said it looked too much like another word. So he says, as an English guy, that looks like something else to me. So, you know, there was a lot of trial and error, but I think when Nectar, when we all we had that moment where we were like, this is the one. This is the one.
Love that. So if someone's listening, if there's a founder listening and they're like, oh, I've got an idea and a drink, let's say they want to launch a drink, where do they start? And is there any advice you could give? Like, you must have had some ups and downs with packaging and companies that will do it for you. If there's someone listening, what advice can you give? Where do they go? Can they reach out to you?
Definitely reach out to us, you know, just because we're a drinks brand. We're not going to be the last one. Like, we're always happy to share our experience. The first thing I'd say is just do it. You know, everyone's got that idea. And then, you know, when somebody does it, oh, I had that idea, but they don't see all the hard. First thing is just getting started. And for me, you know, I do cybersecurity, brother-in-law's a physio. We were like, how do you make a drink? Do you know what I mean? Where do you start? So for us, we started with an amazing company called Tastehead, that are food scientists. Okay. And they really help, because we had an idea about the flavors and stuff like that, but it's how do you make that into an industrial process, because you have to make these things at scale. And they really helped educate us on kitchen table to getting thousands of litres made in one go. So your first stop is food scientists, because then you can start to understand what is and isn't possible. But there's so much to kind of learn, because when you're working with food substances, you know, we put adaptogens in, and everyone always goes, what are adaptogens? It's simply just, think of different herbs that affect your nervous system. Caffeine brings you up. Lavender, chamomile help you relax. So things like this. Some of them, the newer ones that people have discovered, come under something called novel foods. And then that's the difference between being a beverage and a dietary supplement. You know, sometimes you look on the back of a can, it says dietary supplement. It'll have some that's under novel foods. And that's a very technical example, but that's kind of, you need to know your stuff. So start doing your research, reach out to these people. There's plenty of great companies out there. One thing I'll say is there's a lot of consultants out there. There's a lot of people that are always happy to take your money as well. It is a very expensive endeavor. If anybody does want to start, we're always happy to share where we went wrong. Do you know what I mean? Because, you know, it's great to have more people out there just expanding the category.
And was it Tastehead you said you went to?
Yes, a great company based in Fulham.
Oh, okay. Perfect. So how do we buy the drink?
So Nectar, it's available from our website. So that's nectardrinks.com. It's available from Amazon, and we work with a variety of online resellers as well. More of the specialist alcohol-free ones. But, you know, we're starting to expand into bars and restaurants as well. We're Birmingham based at the moment, so that's kind of been where we've been focusing. But we are slowly moving across the country. So watch this space in terms of bars and restaurants. But, you know, please do give us a visit and a try.
And where do we normally find you? Which social handles do you normally hang out on?
It is, I'm showing my age now when it comes to social handles. I have to think it's Nekta.Drinks. So that's on Instagram, and LinkedIn are our primary ones that we do.
Okay, perfect. Anything else you want to add about your brilliant brand?
Well, I say taste them because hopefully they speak for themselves. For
Which
me,
one's your favourite?
I always get asked this. So on a hot day, it's the citrus one.
That's my favourite.
On a hot day, but generally speaking, the cacao and chai, because it's so different. But when I'm eating, it's a different one as well because of the way it complements the food. But I'd say overall the cacao and chai, that's it's so different. But a big thank you to you for connecting, for reaching out, for giving us this opportunity, not just to talk about Nekta, but recovery as well. Because, you know, one of our main purposes is for the people that need help, making sure they know that help is there. You know, these drinks aren't here to solve the problem of alcoholism. That's always going to be there. You know, we're not that naive to think. But when people do struggle with it, there is help. I'm an example of that. You know, and not necessarily get sober the way I did. There's plenty of other ways. But the thing is, just give it a go. It's not the end of the world.
And thank you for coming on, sharing your story. I know it's not easy. Sometimes we just have to be a little bit vulnerable. But look what came out of it.
Yes, that's look where we are, and let's see where we are in 10 years, like you say.
Thank you. Thank you, Navraj.
Thanks for having me.